Good marketers follow best practices. Great marketers create best practices. And one of the great marketers I know is Jon Macdonald, who created new best practices for conversion rate optimization. It's super important if you run any website. What are his new thoughts around conversion rate optimization? So let's get into it. Let's check it out.
So everybody, today we have Jon Macdonald. First of all, you have a very popular name, Macdonald. Most of the people might know you already in terms of surname. Do you know how many McDonald's are there, by the way, in the US?
I have no idea. And I spell mine a little bit differently. It's MAC, McDonald. So
McDonald, yeah.
Definitely fewer than MC Donald.
There was this copywriter called Gary Halbert.
Yes.
And he wrote a letter to like a 15,000 last name people. And that got really popular because he used the last name thing. I don't remember the exact story, but like thinking about like if there are not so many McDonald, can we send them a letter, like something like that?
Yeah.
Right? Cool. So thank you for coming over. Who's Jon for people who don't know you?
Yeah, well, I'm founder and CEO of The Good. We are a conversion rate optimization firm. So we help brands to convert more of their visitors into customers. And we do that through data science and helping brands to understand the clicks and movements that are happening on their site and use that to improve the customer experience and thus conversions in online sales. And been doing this for about 13 years now. So I've been in this world for quite a while now.
How do you guys differentiate from guys that invest? They started with you as well. So, and I would love to know, like, when you both pitch, like, how do you tell people your story differently?
Yeah. So, I started out as a computer scientist. I have a computer science degree. And for the first couple of years that after I graduated college, I worked with advertising agencies, helping them just build websites. Because back then, that was it. You just had to put up a website and people would show up and buy. There wasn't as much competition. As my career evolved a little bit over the next handful of years, e-commerce really started taking off. And when I started The Good, I built it up as a e-commerce development agency. We would build e-commerce websites. And of course, we would put effort on the customer experience, but that wasn't what we sold. We sold effective e-commerce sites, right? Then what I quickly came to realize after maybe only a year or 2 years of being in business, that the reality is that brands didn't really care that much about the code behind their websites as long as it worked. And as competition started getting more and more stiff in e-commerce, what we also found was that brands really cared more about converting their visitors into buyers. And we had always offered a service we call continual optimization. And we offered that for two reasons. I did it, one, as a way to set my team up for success, meaning that no website ever launches and it's perfect at launch. There's always some time after launch where you start getting more volume of orders, you start getting customer feedback, and you need to make some adjustments to the site, work out the kinks or the bugs, etc. So I wanted to be upfront with that with our clients that, hey, we need to have some time after launch to be able to fix these things. And so I did that to set up my team, but I also did it because we wanted our customers to really have an emphasis on that customer experience. And so after a couple of years, I realized development's a commodity. Brands don't really care what your code looks like. You could take 2 tin cans with a string between it, and as long as it converted the orders, they were happy, right? They had no idea what the code looked like. And so what I realized was that it was becoming a commodity. Anyone could do it. Shopify was coming out and really turning that into a SaaS offering. So you needed less and less skills. And I went around the country and I interviewed all of our customers, our big customers. And I said, hey, I took 2 weeks. I just flew around the country. I said, hey, I'm going to be in your city. I really want to chat with you for an hour. Can we sit down? And surprisingly, almost all of them said yes. And I asked them, why'd you just decide to work with The Good? Why'd you choose us over any other development agency that's out there or your cousin who could build you a website? And they all said it was because we offered that continual optimization, that they really liked that we would help them to optimize for that customer experience. And a light bulb went off and said, that's where we need to focus. We don't need to do any of this development. We don't need to build the websites. That's all commodity. Where the real value is we're providing is in helping people provide a better online experience. At the time, conversion rate optimization wasn't really even a term, right? It was an industry that had no competitors. There's nobody around. And then, I found out a few years later, there were a couple other people talking about this and doing it, but the community certainly wasn't there and it wasn't a well-known term. Here we are 13 years later, and now it's pretty commonplace. Almost every digital marketing firm has it as a bullet point on their website. Now, does that mean they can, they really have a team built up around how to best do it? No, but they're helping increase the awareness. And I'm glad that I could be a small part of doing that early on and be one of the experts in making this happen.
Great. Okay, just for people to understand, what is continual optimization is and how is a good business opportunity for you?
So continual optimization is what has now become conversion rate optimization. It's basically using data science and the power of science to help you improve your website in an iterative fashion. Most brands come in and they want to completely burn down the house and build a new one, right? They're just like, hey, our website's not performing well. We need a new website. The reality is that most brands take that massive capital expense every 2-3 years to redo their website. And if they took that and they divided it up and spent just a small portion of that each month over month, they would see massive gains. And I talk about this in the book. It's the power of small gains. And there's a model that James Clear has put together. And he's written actually a whole book about it called Atomic Habits. That's really good. And, his whole philosophy is that if you just get 1% better every day, you don't have to really aim for the moon. You're just trying to get incrementally better every day in a small part. You could be over 37 times better by the end of the year. And that's all it really takes is just a really small movement every day. And so that's really what we provide here at The Good is helping brands to move that needle on a regular basis. Look at it as an iterative growth where we're learning each day and then we're compounding that growth by building upon those learnings day over day, improving that customer experience through data science.
Got it. Okay. So you talked about this book, which is like Opting into Optimization, which is released already. It's on Amazon as well, so people can buy it. I'm going to link in the show notes as well. What I want to dive into is like the 3 mental models, which are basically 3 chapters that you talked about. And I love those mental models. And I actually fall trap of these mental models as well, like these mistakes that you said in the book. So let's dive into it. So the number 1 is actually, which is called best practices are for beginners. And I love the chef versus cook analogy. So I'd love you to get into what it is and then if there's a story around it.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, most of the brands we work with start off with the wrong mental models. They're looking to just complete the sale. They're not thinking about the long-term growth. They're not thinking about converting in a way that is better for the consumer. And that's why I wrote this book, Opting into Optimization, was all about what are the 9 mental models that you need to have to be the best that your brand can be at e-commerce. What are the 9 mental models that I keep seeing over and over and over in brands that succeed? And what are the brands that work with us by the time they start and when they leave, what has changed? And having done this for over a decade, I started seeing some pretty clear patterns. And so each of the chapters in this book is a mental model. And as you mentioned, one of the first ones I start with, I think actually the first model is best practices are for beginners. And that's because there are so many articles out there. If you just search conversion rate optimization, there's millions of words of articles and videos on YouTube and podcast episodes all about what are the 5 things that you should do to your website that are going to help it convert better. Here's the problem. As a brand, you think of your website as a bike. When you initially start, you need training wheels, right? That helps you kind of get your bearings, get going in the right direction, get some speed, right? Those are best practices. But as you continue to grow and get better with your e-commerce and have some sustained momentum moving in the right direction with some speed, you need to take the training wheels off because they just start holding you back, right? You're never going to be able to go as fast. If you hit a bump in training wheels, you're going to have issues versus if you just are on two wheels, right? So it's the same thing with best practices. You're limiting yourself by only focusing on those best practices. And that's truly the challenge where brands, come to us. We worked with a brand called Easton Baseball. Now, Easton Baseball is, if you're not familiar with the brand, they make baseball bats and softball bats. And in the US, there's a major thing called Little League Baseball. It's where kids go and that really want to be good at baseball. That's where they go. And Easton Baseball they sponsor the Little League World Series. Almost 99% of swings are done with an Easton Baseball bat. So they own the market. However, when it came to online sales, when we started working with them, their online sales were like 1 or 2% of their overall revenue. And you had to go to a sporting goods store to buy their bats. The problem with that was that everybody was going to mobile. Parents were talking in the stands, watching their kids play and saying, hey, I need a new bat for my son or daughter. Where should I go? They said, go to Easton. They make the best bats. We really like this model. And the challenge with that was that Easton followed the same template that everyone else follows when they first start a website. And they put up a grid of photos. And it really looked like when you went to choose a baseball bat that you could choose between the color. And that was pretty much it. Because if you think about it, a small picture of a baseball bat is going to look the same, even if it has different functionality. And they went and they built out a product detail page based around best practices. But parents would go there and they would have no understanding of what bat was best for their child. And then what would happen is children would go and they'd swing this bat. Parents would spend $300 on a bat. The children would go and they'd use the bat in a game or in practice. They would get up to play and the umpire would tell them they couldn't use the bat, their brand new bat. And the kid would be devastated. The parent would be upset because they just spent all this money and the bat's already, slightly damaged because they've used it for batting practice. And, they would return the bats or get very upset and call customer service. And customer service was flooded with these calls. And what we found out pretty quickly was that parents would go buy a bat on the website and not know what bat their kid needed or what was approved for each league. So in doing a little bit of customer interviews and research, we found that if Easton had just spoken to their customers instead of following best practices, that they could have had a much more effective site. Not only would they have sold more, but they would have reduced their burden on their customer service team, which was getting dozens of calls a day about parents being angry that they had the wrong bat. And they would have increased their margins and revenue because they wouldn't have had to deal with the returns and with the customer service inquiries, and they would have happier customers. So what we did is we set up a bat finder. You go to the website and you could sort the bats based on 3 or 4 key metrics. What kind of hitter is your kid? Are they trying to hit a home run or are they just trying to get on base? What league is your child in? Because different bats are certified for different leagues. How old and how much does your kid weigh? If you could answer those 2 questions, then we could also give you a different weight of the bat, where the weight is centered in the bat. All of these things you cannot tell from a photo. And once we made these changes, Easton saw about a 270% growth in online sales year over year and a massive, massive growth. I want to say thousands of % of growth in mobile sales. Because this is where parents were having conversations and say, oh, yeah, this is the bat you want. And then they were able to go through and sort very quickly and get it down to from what I would call a wall of bats when you went to the product page and it was just all these boxes of little photos of bats down to 3 or 4. And they could choose between those based on price point. And so it made it much more convenient and easy. And all it meant was they had to talk to their customers and not be focused on best practices.
Got it. Amazing story, I have to say, very well articulated in terms of how best practices are maybe just the start, but not the end. And just from my side, it seems like I don't know when you did it, but it seems like the invention of quizzes in e-commerce. This is like a quiz that they have to ask. And So totally get it why it had 270% of conversions. Let's get into the second one, where I would love you to talk about. So most people are here at growth marketing and understand the scientific method, but many people don't understand the misconceptions around it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a story around it where people had misconception on scientific method, would be amazing to know, like for people to learn from your mental models.
So the scientific method is really all about using numbers to help you improve your site versus really focusing on intuition, where so many brand owners, what they do is they say, oh, we're going to make this change because I think that's best. And I say this all the time, but it is very difficult to read the label from inside the jar. What I mean by that is you are so close to your brand. You are so close to your website. You're using it every single day. You know all of your products inside and out. And so to you, it's very easy to navigate your website, or it's very easy to have a good understanding of what product is best for what need. But as a new to file consumer, someone who just clicked on an ad and came to your site, very, very different. And to them who don't know anything about your brand, once they reach your site, they're really, looking at how can I solve my pain or need? And there's a great movie out there that shows this and exemplifies it very well. It's called Moneyball. There's also a great book behind it. And it's a story of Billy Beane, who is a general manager for a American baseball team called the Oakland A's. Now, Oakland A's athletics had the smallest payroll in Major League Baseball. They just didn't have a lot of money. And it was something like less than 10% of the New York Yankees payroll, who had the biggest payroll in baseball. That disparity is huge. And what this shows you in the story goes through to show you how a little guy compete against the big guy and still win. And what Billy Beane came up with is his philosophy was, we're not going to outspend the Yankees. We can't. There's no way. So we're never going to have the biggest and best names out there in baseball. We just can't put a team of superstars together. But what we can do is look at the data. What are the one or two things that we need to do to win? So if we look at all of the data and say, okay, we see that what do we have to do to score runs? We have to get guys on base, right? Let's not worry about hitting home runs. We don't want the sluggers. We can't afford them. But what we can do is go after the players who get on base the most. And so let's go find those guys. And they were able to run the numbers and put a team together that goes to the World Series. And they were able to do that because they focused on the right metrics. And so that's really what the scientific method is about, is focusing on the right metrics. Then you go back and you compound that by applying the James Clear method I talked about, right? The power of iteration. So you define the right metrics. Then you say, okay, we're going to get better. Every single move we make is just going to compound. We're not looking again to swing for the fences. We're looking to just get a little bit better every single time. And that's where the James Clear model can help you get that 37.78 times better within a year. And that's exactly how the Oakland A's did it. And so that's why I include that story in this chapter, because if you're able to have that mindset, the Moneyball mindset, and apply that to your e-commerce website or even your B2C or B2B website in a SaaS type of environment, and you just say, okay, what are the most meaningful metrics I can focus on this year? It might be conversion rate, but maybe we'll break it down. It looks even smaller than that. Maybe it's we want to increase our average order value, or we want to reduce cart abandonment, or we just want to get more people into our product detail pages, right? You could even go that high level and just say, okay, I'm really going to get down to what is that one or two meaningful metrics that we need to improve this year that will just change the game for us. And then put everything you can around the data collection. So start doing all the tracking, start doing your A/B testing, start doing more qualitative methods like user testing, right? All focused around improving those individual metrics that are really going to help push you to that next level. When you do that, you will be 37 times better at the end of the year. And you will see some massive gains, and who knows, maybe you'll topple the big guys like Oakland A's attempted to do with the New York Yankees.
Got it. Yeah. That leads me to the next mental model, which I personally disagree with, but I think we are on the same page at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like once they arrive, stop marketing to them. I understand you wanted to say like, oh, don't market to them by giving some discount offer, pop-ups, this and that. But I think the real thing starts is actually customer education. And I think for me, marketing is actually customer education by letting them arrive to their decision. But you said like stop marketing. So like, tell me more about like, how did you come up to this and like, what do you exactly mean?
Yeah. So two things. One is consumers are only at your site for two reasons. The first is that something drove them to your site that makes them think that your product or service can help solve their pain or need, right? The second reason they're at your site is because they want to convert as quickly and easily as possible. If they determine that you can solve their pain or need, then great. They want to convert and then get on with their lives. Nobody is at your website to hang out. You're not Facebook. You're not there. Nobody's there to kill time or just check up on people, right? So think about it this way. If your website has two goals, and that first is to help solve somebody's pain or need and help them clearly understand if you can do that, and then to help them purchase that product or service as quickly and easily as possible. Those two things include education, as you're talking about, but it's clearing the path, not getting in the way of them. So think about this as a retail store. If you wouldn't do it in your retail store, don't do it on your website. Okay, so great way to think about this. Now, if you know, email pop-ups, if I could eliminate email pop-ups from the internet, I would do it in a minute. If I could push that button and say, I'll trade every dollar I own and just get rid of email pop-ups, I would do it. And here's why. If I walked into a retail store and a sales associate jumped out in front of me with a clipboard and said, John, give me your email address, I'll give you 10% off. I would be like, hey, hold on here. I don't know if you can help solve my pain or need. I don't even know really what you're selling yet. And something attracted me in the window that made me come into your store, but I have more questions about that. I'm not ready to give you my personal information. And how do I know if I want 10% off yet? I don't. So you're doing the same thing when you put that email pop-up in front of people when they first come to your website. And, you know, we do the same thing with these auto-rotating carousels, right? If you think about it, there's these products and offers going by because the marketing team, not the sales team, but the marketing team really wants to communicate all these multiple messages. They want to show you that they have this wide range of products and they want to communicate these promotions that they're running and deals they have. So they create these carousels that just fly by one after the other in front of the consumer. Imagine if that came into a retail store and I kept trying to reach for a product to learn more about it on a rack, but it just kept flying by me, right? And the next product would slide over the next product. I would get so frustrated, I'd leave. Who would think that'd be acceptable? Yet we do that to people on our websites on a daily basis. And so I really implore people to think that just because you can't see the consumer on the other side of the screen doesn't mean that they're not human. You got to treat them like a human. Every visitor coming to your website is a human. Treat them like that and make it a better experience. And I actually tried to condense into this chapter the whole first book that I wrote, which had the title Stop Marketing, Start Selling. And I wrote, 200 pages just about this topic and the deep dive into it. And yeah, it's a very controversial title, but on purpose, I wanted to get people's attention that yes, stop when people get to your website, start helping them. Don't try to just continue to get in their way with marketing messages. It's really something that I continue to see on a daily basis.
Yeah. I think those part of the culprits are those email marketing tools. They want to sell the thing and they say, oh, this works for our client. You should definitely do that. And actually, like we used to sell pop-ups at Vitals too, my previous company. And I actually was completely against pop-ups. And what I wanted to do was like actually go in a shopping mall and do that literally, like, hey, 10% off. Do you want to just buy now? 10% off. Like, and like, last call, can you come and try this again? Like, so wanted to really do that video, haven't done that, but like, totally makes sense. Like, why would you actually annoy people? I think you should get away. Like, people are already trying to think and decide in their head, like, is this something for me or not? And they're like, oh, 10% off. Right? Yeah, that doesn't make sense. But people still do it, and it kind of works for them. So whatever you say, it doesn't matter, but it still works for them. Right? They still put them in the journey. Right now, what I do is personally, I go to the website and I give them the email address, and I don't buy it, and then come back and then buy it, but 10% off. Like, but that's what I do personally. And what I also do is I Google, like, for example, Peloton's discount code, and get some discount codes, right? So, and some of them work, some of them don't work, but like, that's something I have started doing this practice since I found out. And yeah, so what do you have to say to those email marketing companies who are really pushing for this idea to collect email addresses?
Yeah.
And they have a case study, they have case studies, they have proof, they have evidence, it works. Yeah. Even like my clients who were like at Vitals, like, I see that the pop-up is getting the email address, and they start a journey of talking. But I wanted to know, like, what do you think about it?
I have two thoughts on this. The first is, all of those case studies that you read about are all about how many email addresses they collected, not about the revenue generated from that pop-up of those email addresses. Okay. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that the quality of those email addresses on those initial pop-ups are very, very poor. We do user testing on those all the time, and I can tell you we see a handful of things that cause problems. The first is, people sometimes will just enter a fake email address just to get the pop-up out of the way because they can't figure out how to close it otherwise. So then you have, you're potentially filling your email list with bad emails. Now, the other thing that could happen there is people put in their junk email address, right? They sign up for a Yahoo account or a secondary Google account. And what they do is they go in and they just put that email in there just so that they have all of their discounts going in case they want it later. And it all goes to this junk email that rarely gets opened, rarely gets read, but they go there when they have a specific need or want. And the challenge with that is, over the long term, you're doing two things as a brand. You're hurting the quality of your email list, which should be your highest revenue generating channel, right? Email should be your best converting, highest channel for revenue. You send an email, it should be like ringing up the cash register. But so you don't want to hurt that list over time, right? You want to keep the quality high. You want to keep your deliverability rate high. And if you think that Google as a whole is not looking across their entire Gmail data set and saying, okay, let's just pick on Peloton for a second, because you mentioned them, that Peloton is sending 200,000 emails right now. And out of those 200,000, only 200 got opened. What Gmail is going to do is go into people's inboxes and move that email from the primary tab to the promotions tab, because it's become clear that it's a promotion, because people aren't opening it, they're not reading it. So either promotions or spam. And so they're using big data in a way that is hurting your brand because you decided to reduce the quality of your email list. So your deliverability rate goes down, your open rates continue to go down. It's a very slippery slope. The second thing is, let's say it is effective. What's it effective at? My point of view, it's effective at telling people that you're a discount brand before they've even had a chance to learn about the quality or any other benefits that your brand offers. You're immediately telling them, our prices aren't worth what we charge for it. It's worth 10%, 20% less, whatever that deal is. So you're telling people right up front, hey, we're a discount brand. Don't worry about the quality. Get a good price. And then you're in a price battle with your competition, where you just continually go lower, and they, you put up 10%, they put 12. You put up 15, they go 20. How many times are you going to do that before you just drain your margin? Right? I'm a firm believer that discounting is not optimization. It is margin drain. And, I have yet to see a discount that is $1 or percentage off really move the needle in a sustainable fashion. Instead, if you really want to do this pop-up, don't do it right when the site launches. Bake it into your homepage, and then do it on a secondary or third step in the journey where people have done a little more research and maybe they're ready to dive a little bit deeper, and it's going to help push them over the edge. Then instead of doing a promotion of $1 or percentage off, do an offer. Do something that is a free gift with purchase, buy one, get one, or a bundle, something that adds value, right? So look at it in this, have the mindset of adding value, not subtracting margin. And if you can think about it in that way, then you will have a much more sustainable email list, and you'll have a much more sustainable customer base that you can increase the customer lifetime value, and you're not training people to always look for that discount. Because what's going to happen if they get that 20% off and it's for first-time customers only? Well, they're going to muddy up your CRM by coming back to your site, signing up under another email address, and then becoming a new customer under that email address. And your CRM is now going to have duplicate records just because somebody wanted that 20% off, and your data is going to get less quality over time.
Got it. I see that you also have the embedding pop up in your application. Like I have to go extremely down to click on subscribe your inbox, and then you ask for all the details, and it doesn't look at all salesy. Like it's how is that turning out for you? Because I remember like in my SaaS website, like when we had just simple box, somewhere it didn't work, and then I had to embed them into each blog and have to put it on the right side to actually have different offer, because somebody is interested in reading the case study and somebody is interested in like just getting the content and like to start their journey. So I know you're not doing it, but just like for an agency like you, like how is that working out for you?
Yeah, it works extremely well because the quality of the content we put out and the consistency at which we put it out. And that's really the key here. Again, it's not one-to-one with e-commerce, right? Because we're a services agency, if you will. But we're not ever doing a discount in our email list. We're not selling to people. Instead, each week we're adding value. And if we can then add value, and as much value as we can add, we will eventually convert that person when there's a need. And so for us, it's an education, but it's also let's be in the right place at the right time when that need arises. And until then, let's just continue to add value. And that has been how we've scaled over this decade. And for 8 or 9 years, we have sent a new email every single week that has provided value. For 8 years, a new email every week. That is a lot of content. And so it's a content marketing play for us, right? And we're playing the long tail. It's not something that a brand can do if they need sales today. But it's something where if you're willing to put the work in and show up and get 1% better every week, you can grow that list dramatically over time just by providing value.
Got it. Okay, cool. So let's hop into the rapid fire round, which is my favorite part. The first question for you would be that who's your favorite growth marketer? Could be in e-commerce, could be in agency, like somebody like you admire.
Yeah, there's two people out there that I really have been fans of over the last handful of years. The first is Dave Gerhardt. If you're not familiar with him at all, he was at HubSpot, then Drift, and he's back at Drift now. But he also helped Privy really launch their content marketing model. So in e-commerce, we all know Privy. He came over as their CMO and really turned them into a media company. So if you go to them now, they have an amazing podcast that Ben, their founder, still does. They had, basically were able to turn this into something that gave them such great growth acceleration. They were able to turn around and sell the company. And that's a really great win for them. And Dave does, if you're looking for more B2B marketing, Dave is in he's got a couple of good groups that he does. He's got a Facebook group that's great, things of that sort. But Dave Gerhardt is one. The second is Connor Gross. I don't know if you're familiar with Connor, but he actually comes out of that tree of Dave, if you will, where he worked with him at Privy. But Connor Gross, he's got a great podcast all about entrepreneurs in their 20s. And he is a hustler. And what I really love about him is that he's willing to share every detail about what he's doing. And he's willing to share the highs and the lows of what he's going through. And he and a friend recently bought a storage facility. And you would think, okay, well, what's this online marketer buying a storage facility for? And he has brought it down to what the lessons are he's learned from buying this storage facility, just painting it, the things that he finds there and has to take care of, and how to take something that's an undervalued asset. I think he turned the story around about how when he went there, all the accounting was done on a whiteboard in one of the offices. There was no like QuickBooks or any digital accounting, not even a spreadsheet. Somebody literally went into a whiteboard each month and checked somebody's name if they had made their payment. He's like, how is this even like a viable business? So he took it, modernized that business, and is sharing all the lessons as he goes through that. And it's a lot of fun. And he's got a great podcast, and he's really been hustling, which is great to see.
Cool. This podcast started because of Dave Gehard, by the way. Like,
lovely.
Like, you should start a podcast, and at least you will meet cool people if it doesn't grow. So like, I'm happy that it has 10,000 downloads, but at least like it has cool people in it. Anyway, what's the one bad piece of advice you've ever got?
Ooh. Bad piece of advice I've gotten has been to focus on my competition. And I would say that the more you look at the competition, the less that you will innovate, because you're really just looking at what everyone else is doing instead of focusing on where you need to be going. I say this often, but there's a reason that race horses wear blinders, right? Because if they start looking to the side, they're going to run in that direction. And what are you going to do? You're just going to run into your competition, right? So instead, really focus on your goal and where you want to be. That will help you be more sustainable. And so that's what I've always tried to do with the good is just look ahead and not really focus on the competition.
Yeah. I kind of partially agree and disagree at the same time. Focusing on one of my competition actually got us huge growth in SaaS. And right now I'm working in this B2C company since it's a school. And we have some competition. I don't know exactly their name and their website. And I'm trying to be just away from their website because I don't want to be biased, because then I'm looking at them, not at us and our customers. But like we have indirect competition, which I have like, it's an Udemy's for kids basically. And I'm looking because that's the real alternative. They're not direct competition, but like they're the indirect competition. And I'm looking at them as a competition because like, it gives me ideas. What are the alternatives? My customers are trying and learning just what are the jobs to be done to actually see where fit into place. But the real direct competition, I'm not looking at. I'm like, okay, if I look at this, last time I looked at it, I got biased a little. So I want to be away from it. But sometimes just focusing on competition, how you are different, how you differentiate yourself, it really helps. So that's how I think about it.
And I think that's the key, the shift. That's the mindset shift that so many brands don't make. You're not competing against the people that have the exact same solution as you. You're competing against the alternate solutions that are available out there, right? And that's the best way to be thinking about it, right? How can you take from and copy from somebody that is doing something that is solving the pain the customer has, but not in the same way you are? What are they saying? What are their objections that they're addressing? Maybe you should be doing that too. And I think that's the key shift, is not looking at your direct competitors. So I think I love the way that you explain that. That's a great angle.
Yeah. So the next one is, what have you recently changed your mind about?
Recently changed my mind about, not related to e-commerce or anything of that sort, but I grew up in Ohio. And if you're not familiar with the NBA and basketball, Cleveland Cavaliers, and kind of right after college was when LeBron James became a rookie in the NBA at Cleveland. And I've always been a lifelong fan of LeBron. And I think over the past handful of years, I've become less and less of a fan of him. And over the last about 2 years, I would say he's no longer my favorite basketball player. And I've recently changed my mind on that. And I think he's a great business person. I think he's very intelligent, but I don't think he's the generational NBA player that everyone had him out to be when he was younger.
Makes sense. Well, I have no idea about basketball, so I'm not going to argue with that.
Well, it's hard to see on here, but I'm 6'7". I played basketball in college. I love basketball. I still play competitively to this day. And so it's a passion of mine.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for giving us your golden nuggets from the book. People should go and read it. It's an amazing read. it's not heavy to your eyes. Actually, you really read it, and the main concept explained in the big idea. You don't have to go and read the entire thing if you just want to learn. Like, it's few more concepts in that book. It's amazing. So I'd really recommend that. And so yeah, thank you so much for coming over, John.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
This is Growth Marketing Story with your host, and he goes by Azashai. Come learn from the mindset of growth marketers. This is Growth Marketing Story with your host.